sowing does, it gives you the liberty. But let me skip over verse 8, and I promise I'll come back to it. But let me deal with verse number 9, because it's a problem in it. Verse number 9 says, and let us not grow weary in well-doing, for in due season we'll reap if we faint not. Now there's a question there that's implied but not seen. And the question is, if somebody tells you, don't grow weary in well-doing, they are implying that you will grow weary in well-doing. So the question is, have you ever grown weary in doing well? All of us grown weary in doing the wrong thing. That's what drove us to God. But have you ever grown weary in well-doing? Have you ever been in a place in your life where you couldn't pray and somebody else had to pray you through? Have you ever been in a place where you were talking to God and God wasn't talking back to you? If you haven't, grandmama would say, you just keep on living, baby. You just keep on living. You'll understand it better by and by. But if you've ever been in that place where you couldn't sleep at night, I mean, you were just toiling through the night. It may have been about a relationship or a broken heart you was dealing with. It may have been about a loss of a loved one that you were dealing with. It may have been about your child. It may have been a death that you were facing, a bad report from the doctor. It may have been a lot of things. But what happens is, one of those nights, after all of that weeping, God gives you one word to lift you up out of that bad situation. Has he ever given you one word that gave you your joy back? One word that restored your marriage? One word that lifted you out of that depression? One word. He didn't change the situation, but that word he gave you sustained you through that situation. Oh, well-doing. Let me talk about well-doing for a moment, if you would. Well-doing, the scholars say, is a dichotomy. In other words, it's an opposing concept. It's subjectively and objectively. Let me push it a little further. Subjectively, I do real well, Barry, when you are forgiving me for hurting you. But objectively, I don't do so well when I got to forgive you for hurting me. Well-doing is sacrificial. And what Paul is saying, don't you grow weary in well-doing, because in due season you're going to reap if you faint not. But let me talk about this for a moment, and I need you to sit real still while I suck the oxygen out of your brain. Let me ask you something in the form of a question. If God be all-powerful, and I believe that, and he's all-knowing, and I believe that too, and he's greater in me than he that's in the world, how then do you get weary with the greater one in you? Now let's go back to verse number 8. Verse number 8 says, if you sow to your flesh, you will reap corruption from your flesh. And God can't stay where there's some corruption. You see, I can't talk about none of you, so let me talk about me for a second. Let me expose myself, because I'm not scared. One of the things, I've got some stuff in me that I don't want you to see, because I've been in some relationships and I've exposed that side of me to that person that I trusted. But instead of them praying for me, they tried to bury me. Instead of lifting me, they condemned me. Instead of holding me with compassion, they tried to destroy me. But I've got this thorn